Hello everybody, welcome to Catherine Sews. Thanks so much for joining me today. Christmas is coming and I've got some sewing to do and I want you to join me for the ride. I've got 3 young men on my gift list and you know what? A few years ago I made them all fleece pajama pants. And I just heard back that they thought they were the greatest things ever. Like those were the words that they used, the greatest things ever. And they wanted me to do it again. So that's what I'm going to do. But I want to show you how fast this can be. Really, once you get your prep done, it can be lightning fast. I'll just tell you what my prep was, what I did to get ready for this. And if you're like me and you're doing last minute gifts, this might just be the video for you. So I went to the fabric store and I bought 3 different kinds of fleece. They're all really fun prints. One of the keys to being able to do this really quickly is that I have to be able to sew them all with the same color thread. Black motif on everything, that's going to be perfect. And the amount of fleece I bought was about 1.5 yards or 1.3 meters. This pattern fits up to a large onto the folded fabric. If you go into extra large, 2XL or 3XL, you're going to need to buy 2 lengths of the fabric, so twice as much, 2.6 meters or 3 yards. The pattern I use though, it's ancient. I wish I could tell you where I got it from. I have no idea. It's the one I use in my classroom. It's also one of the keys to why this is going to be fast. It has no side seam. You can take like any sort of sweatpant or pajama pant and lay it with the 2 side seams together and cut out the whole big shape like that. And that eliminates 1 seam. And lay your front pajama pant down and the back right up against it. And then you just eliminate that side seam. Even if your pieces started off with a curve on the top here, that's okay. Just touch the hip together and then this space in between makes it pull over the hip easily. Right? So it ends up being one big shape like that. It's also got the heights listed on the legs. So I've got the boys' waist measurement and their heights. I've got my serger threaded with black and my sewing machine threaded with black. I wound a couple extra black bobbins so that I don't have to stop. I will be using my serger, but if you don't have a serger, no problem. Anytime I use the serger, you can just zigzag your edge, no problem. It's the same thing. I've got a few packs of elastic. You need probably less than 1 yard for each pair. Your fabric, your elastic, thread in your machine, you're ready to go. I cut these out in my classroom where I've got the big long table. That's also another time saver. Also, when I'm cutting, I make sure the fabric is right side together as I'm cutting so that it's all ready for me to sew it. As soon as it's cut, it's ready to get sewn. 2 of the pants that I'm making are just about the same size, a couple inches difference in the waist measurement, which I'm just going to make up that difference in the elastic itself. One is a bit bigger, so I cut it separately. Good. When I cut the 2 together, layered like this on my table, the under layer is actually a little narrower, so the corner, like the center front, center back, coming around to the inseam, one of the points is actually hanging off the edge of the fabric. So there's no way I'm going to go buy a whole other length of fabric. I'm just going to show you how you can piece that together super easily just with a scrap of your fabric. It's like 5 minutes. Okay, so this is the difference I was talking about. This fabric was just a little narrower than this one. So there was a fold right here. So I just cut through the fold, but that's the missing triangle. So I cut a little extra scrap just as long as it's longer than this edge here. I'm just going to pin this in place. And then I'm just going to run to the serger. I'm not even going to sew first. I'm just going to serge. I've got 4 threads in my serger, so that's strong enough, especially for a little small seam like this. That's no problem. So I'm just going to serge that and then open it out and use this one as my pattern piece to just recut my corner. Fine, I'll just serge this and be right back. Both of those corners have that little bit of extra fabric serged onto it. This is the back with the double notch. Okay, so then I just want to line them all back up together. If you're just doing one, you would just line it back up with the pattern piece. But I'm at home now and this pattern is in my classroom, so I'm just using this one as my pattern. And then I just cut off the extra. So there we go. That piece just has this extra little seam. Nobody's ever going to notice that. So with all of the pants now, they're all right side together. And then the first thing I'm going to sew is this center front and center back seam, like the 2 curves. I'll sew the 15 line or 5/8 line there and then serge. I'll do all 3 pants at the same time. It's kind of big to show you exactly what I'm doing, so I'm going to draw it here, kind of like that. The bigger scoop is the back and there's a double notch. The smaller scoop is the front and there's a single notch. And that's pretty typical of patterns. 2 notches means back, single notch means front. So the first thing I'm going to do is sew on the curves like that. So that's the center back and center front seam. And I'll just sew those curves for all three. And I'm using a regular needle, regular thread, regular stitch. This fleece is not stretchy on the lengthwise seams at all. I don't need to do any kind of special stretch stitch on this at all. All right, you could throw a few pins in here if you like, but it's a short enough seam that as long as I have it nicely together, just the way I cut it, I can just sew. So as long as I'm matching up my notches, I'm matching up the pattern too. And then the next one goes right in. With that done now I'm going to run to the serger and serge this edge on all of them. I'm going to be serging right beside where I sewed. I'll serge all of the curved seams. There's one curve, second curve. So this is now two pieces, right? I'll serge all the way around the waist and the bottoms of both legs, but this is separately, not together. Right, we got to get our legs in there, so that's separately. Then back up to the top here. This is the whole top edge of the waist, and I'm just going to serge all the way around this circle. Now I know I just saw my double notch here, so I know this is the back. So I'm going to start and stop there so that I don't have to figure out which is the back later. I know already this is the back, and so if I see my tail of thread there, I'll know that's the back. Now I'm going to be making a casing and threading the elastic through. If you are comfortable serging on your elastic at this point, you can do that right now. It's not my favorite way because it's not adjustable at all. I still prefer the casing and threading the elastic through, but some people love just serging their elastic on, so now's the time to do it. And for now, I'll leave that tail of thread because that tells me that's the back. I'll do across the bottom of both legs. Okay, this first pair is what's going to go in the pile that's ready to go back to the regular machine. And then I'll do the same steps on the second pair. Serge the two curves, serge around the top, and serge the bottom of both legs. I'll do the same on the third one, and then I'll see you right back at the regular machine. Okay, good. So this is all done. I did all that serging, and so far, lickety split. Now, this is where sort of the imaginary side seam is, right? I'm going to pull that side seam away from the other side. Then it's going to start looking like pants. You'll have the center front, center back seams here. This will already be sewn and serged. It is already serged around the top and across the bottom of both pant legs. So now I can put the inseam together, match up the seams front to back, and I'll sew that whole inseam in one long piece and then serge that edge. And wherever I serge, you can zigzag or serge. And at this point, all there is left to do is the casing and the hem. That's it. So there we are. There's my curved seam and my curved seam on this side. So all I do is just pull that, the center front and center back come together. Now I've got the two separate legs. I'm going to do some pinning because this is a long seam. So first thing I want to pin is my matching points. The two seams together. And bottom corners, bring those edges right together. So with those two matching points pinned, then I can just pin in between. Put your matching points together first, then it'll all fall into place. I'll pin all three pants, and then I'll sew the inseam of all of them, and then serge the inseam of all of them. Of course, it's right side together. I'm sewing at the 15 line or 5/8 line, and still just a regular stitch. So there's that little extra triangle that I serged in, and you can see it doesn't really affect anything now. It's getting caught into the inseam. It's going to be just fine. And I don't worry about these tails of serging thread because they're just going to get serged off. All of those inseams are sewn, and so now I'm going to serge all of them. And this is where I'll trim off all of those serging tails. Okay, do that for all three. Next is the hem and the casing around the waist. And for both of those, I want to turn 3 centimeters or 1.25 inches. My elastic is going to be 1 inch wide, and so 1.25 inches makes a good casing and it makes a good hem. I just measure up 1.25 inches and pin around the hem. I put about 4 pins. For the hem at the bottom, you need to sew up on the serging so that it can't still fall down after you've washed it. And for the waist casing, I need to be able to sew on the serging so that I get that full 3 centimeters for my 2.5 centimeter elastic to go through. And remember here, I left the thread chain from the serger, so I know that's the back of the pant. And so this is where I want to leave the gap for the elastic to go through. I'll put a double pin where I want to start sewing and a double pin where I want to finish sewing. And then a pin about every hand width in between. Great, so I've got these all pinned and I'm going to take them all to the machine. I'll sew all of those hems and casings. I have to sew on the serging so that I end up with a 2.5 centimeter wide casing, which is wide enough for my elastic to go through. So I'm just taking off the free arm of my machine so that I can sew all of the hems nice and easy. I like to start and stop at the inseam so that my back tack is a little bit hidden. And I want to be sewing right up here on the serging, because if I'm too low, this is all just going to fall down anyway when you wash it. And I sewed all the hems. Next is the elastic. So the elastic I'm using is not super stretchy. And so what I'm doing is I'm actually starting with the actual waist measurement. And then I'm pushing that through the casing, making sure the elastic doesn't get twisted. Let it stay nice and flat as I pull it through. And if you're worried about losing this end inside, you can pin it to the center back seam, because it does happen sometimes that it just gets pulled right in. Sometimes my students will say they're stuck at the seam, and it's because they're hitting it here inside the seam there. They're going under the seam allowance because you can't tell. So today I'm lucky I'm going this way. I'm not going to get stuck there. But if that is your situation where you get stuck, just sort of bend it a bit and so that you can get in between the layers. On a stretchier elastic, I would normally take about 6 inches off of the waist measurement for the elastic. But today I just want to start with that bigger elastic and then decide once I have it through. I've got about 6 inches of elastic sticking out here. And that's about normal. That seems good, but what I'm going to do to make sure is pin those ends together. So just make sure that the elastic can comfortably stretch to the recipient's waist measurement. So I'll do all 3 like that. All right, so let's head back to the sewing machine. Where I've joined it, I'm just pulling it out from that waistband a little bit. Take out my safety pin and put these 2 ends together. They're overlapping, not right sides together. And just using my reverse button to go back and forth a few times. So nice and strong like that. Then I let it go inside, slip it in, and then I want to close up the gap. So get everything sitting nice on the inside. And then I want to connect to the lines of stitching of where I started and stopped before, just so it looks like one continuous line closing this up. And then here's a fun thought. I'm taking a little scrap of, what is that, about 3 inches by 1 inch of one of the other fabrics, and I'll put that onto the center back just so that the recipient can easily find the back of the pants. I can just slip that right underneath the edge there and then continue. There, that's cute. So I'll do that for all 3 pairs of pants, and then there's one last trick I want to show you after that. What I'll do next is just take that elastic and stretch it in 2 different directions, sort of north to south and east to west, just to make sure that the elastic is sort of evenly spaced. And then again, starting at the center back, there's my tag, and I'm going to start on the outside, and I'm going to do a triple zigzag on here. And I could put 4 pins around or so, but this casing is kind of just the right size for the elastic, so it's not really budging now. This one is my triple zigzag. I'm going to go 5 in the width and 3 in the length. Start at that center back. I'll pick it up about a foot away or so and hold it in that stretched out position and go. My presser foot is just centered on the waistband, and what this does is that it just guarantees that that elastic is not going to bend and twist. Now it does hold the elastic out in a stretched out position a little bit, like it doesn't allow the elastic to shrink in as much, so anytime if you have an elastic that just feels too tight, doing this on top is actually a good way to sort of make that elastic release a little bit. This one is all done now, totally finished. Trim any threads, and then I'll just finish off the other 2. Here are all 3 pairs finished, and they're super cute. I wish I could give you a picture of all 3 of the guys wearing them, but that's not going to happen till next week. So here I am modeling them. And I can tell you they're super cozy and comfy. I mean, how could they not be? So I think that's a great gift. It's something that you can whip up super fast, especially if you know that the people love them and want them. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. It's always lovely to have you along for the ride. And until next time on Catherine Sews, you take care.